You can take a flower, roll it up and make it fine. Sprinkle it with knowledge and a little bit of time. Cover it with headlines and a sweet euphoria too. Cannabis Man, Cannabis Man, Cannabis Man. Spreading news and joy across the land. Diving deep into the growing green. Cannabis Man, we're all keen. Ooh yeah. Ooh yeah.
Hello there, and welcome into another episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Thank you for clicking on the show. I am your host, Don Kleppin. And if it's your first time here, welcome. It's a show where we're trying to take a more journalistic look at all things legal cannabis. I'm a broadcaster in Chicago, and I am a personal cannabis user of about 20 years. I was introduced to the plant in my late teens by my friends in high school, and in addition to enjoying it in the party atmosphere, I found pretty quickly that it helped me get to sleep at night, which is something I'd struggled with my whole life. And that led me to keeping cannabis as a part of my life, but a part that I kept mostly secret as I moved through my professional career in media and journalism and all of that. But once it became legal back in 2014 recreationally in states like Colorado and Washington, and then other states like Illinois legalizing recreationally in 2020, I was very excited to bring the kinds of conversations that I'd had with other stoners, people who were very familiar with the power of the plant. I wanted to bring those conversations and the information and perspective to the masses, but the legacy media channels that are out there still really aren't doing that. I understand the reasons why. A lot of them are national or global companies, and their lawyers tell them that it's still a topic that is not federally embraced enough to make the risk worth the squeeze, so to speak, for them. So that led me to creating this show, this podcast, so I could independently bring you these conversations and information and perspective on my own terms. And I started this journey a little over 3 years ago, and in that time, this has grown to one of the top podcasts in the world. I've reached over 90 countries now, about 1,700 cities around the world, including all 50 states, and various podcast platforms have ranked this pretty highly. I was notified this week, actually, that on Good Pods, they have different charts, and their top 100 indie news commentary podcasts all time. Cannabis Man has hit number 31 in their top 100. It's also hit number 73 all time in their top 100 indie documentary show category. So I'm very, very blown away by that. All of the reception here for this show that I've put on independently has just blown me away. Another platform, Listen Notes, which is kind of like Goodreads for podcasts, has ranked this among the top 10% of all podcasts, well over 5 million out there in the world. And so I just feel very good about that. It tells me that people out there are hungry for this kind of information, and I am very pleased to be able to provide it for you here on the Cannabis Man podcast. On this show, I like to not only bring you news headlines and perspective and keep you up to date on all the latest information and the movers and shakers in legal cannabis space, but I like to review some products for you, and I've got a couple of those to tell you about today. I also like to speak with experts in the space, whether those be politicians, elected or appointed to create and enforce legal cannabis laws in the states or countries where it's been legalized. I'll speak with doctors or scientists, people who might be prescribing medical cannabis to patients or studying it in their labs, answering questions via research that we still have about the plant. I'll also speak with entrepreneurs or CEOs, business owners, people who are operating in the space who have created either products or services that we all get to try in legal cannabis territories. Very exciting. And I've got some of those to speak with today, a conversation with a CEO and COO of a very well-known cannabis brand globally. I'm speaking, of course, about Tyson 2.0, and that would be Mike Tyson. That is the brand, and I'm speaking with CEO Adam Wilks and COO Ryan Burke from that brand today. We're going to talk about the various products that they offer, some of which are just fabulous. I've talked about them a little bit before on the show when I've done the reviews, but I'll reiterate my thoughts about some of those today. And they recently expanded into South Africa, Australia as well, and they are looking to splash into other countries around the world out later this year. So we talk about a lot of different things like their products, some other brands that they have, the murky waters. I mean, as tough as it is to navigate cannabis in the U.S. with every state being different legality and such, trying to do that across different countries around the world, it must be even more complicated. So they give a little insight into what that is like. We talk about regulations and whether or not we should be holding our breath for rescheduling and such. And they talk about some of their philosophies on the best cannabis products and all that kind of stuff too. If you would be so kind, and if you haven't already, leave a rating or a review for this podcast, whichever platform you're listening on, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. You can go ahead and leave however many stars you think this is worth. You can subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes. Leave a comment or a review. Any of that really helps me out, and it continues to let people know that this is worth their time. Of all the other millions of podcasts out there, there's plenty of stuff competing for people's attention and time, and your reviews and comments on this show really help out with that. So without further ado, let's get into this episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Here we go.
This is Tommy Chong, and you're listening to the Cannabis Broadcast.
And here we are. Thank you again for giving this show a shot, especially if it's your first time. And if you've been with me since the beginning, thank you very much. Really can't tell you how much that means to me. It's really nice to know that plenty of people around Chicago are checking this show out. That's where I am. That's where me and my family live. And I've lived in this Chicagoland area much of my life. Spent some of my early years in Wisconsin across the Cheddar Curtain, as we kind of like to say jokingly around here. But when I was about 5, my family moved from the Milwaukee area to just north of Chicago in Morton Grove, and that is where I grew up. Went to school at Parkview Elementary, graduated from there, spent 2 years at Notre Dame High School for boys, and then transferred to Niles West High School, graduated from there, and have just kind of lived my life, moved into the city, and just have never looked back. I do love the Chicago area, and my wife Gretchen and I have lived here in Edgewater on the north side of the city for the last 5 years or so. And in my world, it's been a little hectic because we're getting ready for a move, actually, just across town. We're moving to a different area, kind of near Lincolnwood Town Center, if anybody knows where that is. I believe the area is called Centennial Park. And we just need some more space. Violet's getting bigger now. She's 13 and a half months, and so she's starting to move around and babble and use words a little bit more intentionally and stuff like that. So we've been sharing this one-bedroom condo in Edgewater for 5 years, and now we just need a little more space. And so we've started that process, and anybody who has gone through a move recently, or certainly, from one side of a city to another, and planning between condos, getting the freight elevators all booked and the movers and all of the different steps that just kind of come with this process. It has been a bit hectic around me, so I am trying to continue my regularly scheduled programming with this podcast and my voiceover auditions and the different stuff I have been doing, but do forgive me if I drop off the normal schedule from time to time here. We're expecting to move June 25th, and I'll let you know how all that goes. But in the meantime, if you're in the Chicago area and you've used any movers recently that you would recommend, I could certainly use some recommendations, and you can contact me anytime at 872-269-2403. That's a Google Voice number. You can call or text, leave a voicemail, and if you've got any perspectives on movers or anything else that you want to talk about that I discuss on this episode, feel free to hit that number up anytime. Now, one of the other things I want to mention that's been going on in my world, last weekend was my birthday. I turned 38 on Sunday, Friday the 25th, and so many people reached out via text, voicemails, on Facebook and social media, all of that. It was really actually an unbelievable amount of people, and it just floored me because life has its ups and downs. I'm sure you feel this way too. Not every day, as good as your life might be, not every day is just a magical, it's impossible to sustain the highest level of satisfaction day after day after day. You can have the best life in the world and still feel like crap on a random Wednesday just because that's the way that it goes. But so many people reaching out to me for the birthday just with kind words and well wishes and just expressing it in different ways. It just reminded me how many people I've been fortunate enough to cross paths with and how many connections I've made in my 38 years of life thus far on the planet. And I look forward to making so many more of those because meaningful connections, bumping up against good people on our journeys here, that to me really is the currency that adds up to a full life. Hearing from these people reminded me of the memories we made together. Their words mean more to me than you could ever know. And so I just wanted to kind of say thank you to everybody who sent a shout out or reached out on Sunday or at all this week to just let me know they were thinking of me and sort of just give me the happy birthday wishes. It was very, very kind, and it certainly meant a lot to me. So thank you. I also want to mention, before I get into the cannabis products that I've tried and my expert conversation along with news stories, that if you didn't know already, I mentioned this a while back, but I have been in radio for many years, and I worked for a long time for iHeartRadio doing traffic for various markets: Chicago, Minneapolis, Milwaukee, St. Louis, all these Midwest markets, just jumping on radio stations and reporting on the traffic conditions. I left that job in September just to spend more time with Gretchen and Violet, but also to try and lean more heavily into this podcast and try and push my voiceover career to a new level. I got a new agent a couple years ago, and Brandon Cohn is his name. He's excellent with BAC talent, and he's been sending a lot of auditions. So I decided it was time to try and take a swing and bet on myself and just see where that took me. I will say, just being honest, it hasn't necessarily panned out at the level that I'd hoped it would. I've certainly enjoyed all the extra free time that I've had with my wife and daughter. Financially, it's been a little bit of a struggle for us since I made that change, and so it's led me to kind of pursuing some different things to do with my time in order to bring in money and pay the bills and whatnot. One of the things that I've been doing is doing some background extra sort of work on film and TV shoots. They do a lot of those around Chicago. I don't know how much you pay attention to, the film industry or Hollywood or whatnot, but ever since the writer's strike a couple years ago, people have said that the LA area and film shoots there, the production of this content hasn't really returned to pre-strike levels thus far. And there's a lot of reasons for it, but one of the big ones is that I guess there's a lot of tax credits that are being offered in places outside of Hollywood. Atlanta, Georgia has been a hub for a while. Toronto, Canada has been a big spot. But other places like in the Midwest are starting to really grow by offering these tax incentives. Cleveland has started to pick up some film, but Chicago here is a huge one. We established this studio called CineSpace back in, I think, 2016, 2017. And so it's almost a decade into having that, which is responsible for shooting the shows that you might have heard of, like Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, and PD and all that stuff. But in addition to those, movies are shot here all the time, different TV shows as well. And one of the shows that shot here earlier this year is The Bear, which I believe runs on Hulu. Jeremy Allen White is the star. It's about a chef at a beef shop, in Chicago, and it really showcased the city. It's been very popular ever since it came out. They shot their 4th season, which is set to debut later in June. I believe it comes out June 25th. I was lucky enough to be an extra during that shoot of the 4th season. There was a day somewhere in the city that they needed a lot of extras to fill a movie theater, and I was one of those that got to spend all day on the set, kind of seeing how that all worked together. So I just wanted to let you know that when the 4th season of The Bear comes out, any movie theater scenes, just keep an eye out and you might see me in there. Look for a kind of nerdier guy with glasses just staring vacantly at the movie screen. That would be me. But that's what I've been doing a lot. There was another shoot for an Apple show, Dark Matter, that happened a couple weeks ago, and I was able to shoot with them too. This has been actually a lot more fun than I ever would have expected. It's nice to just have a little extra money. It doesn't pay crazy well, but you do get paid for spending that time on set. And I will say, for my money, the food that I got overnight on the Dark Matter shoot was just unbelievable. I've heard stories about craft services over the years, but I never got to try something at this level. This was just absolutely insane, like filet mignon on a stick. They had these, sort of whitefish grilled cheese sandwiches. They had all these different salads, veggies, and fruits. They had desserts. They had pulled pork, and it was unbelievable. Just these long lines, buffet style, of some of the best food you've ever tried. And it was really kind of like a dream. That was even better than I think the money in my pocket, as well as just, meeting some really cool people and being a part of something that I feel creatively is very fulfilling. I mean, when you see a production at this scale, the amount of extras that are there on the set, the amount of crew, the amount of people making the food, the reservations of where we have to hold before you're actually going to the set and shooting the things, the costume department, the van and the drivers that they use to ferry the extras between the holding and the set places. And then, of course, you get the principal actors, like the real A-listers, the ones who are the leads on these shows, and they're, what they get paid for this stuff. It's just easy to see how, when you read how expensive it is to shoot these things, movies and big budget TV shows. I know if you're like me, I'm sure you've wondered, where the heck does all this money go? When you start doing some of this work, if you ever get to be an extra on any of these sets, you start to see pretty clearly and pretty quickly how that money adds up. But it is a lot of fun. I'm very grateful that I've had the opportunity to do these. I'm hoping to do a few more of these in the months ahead. It should be a really fun summer. But in the meantime, I just wanted to kind of give you that heads up. If you're a fan of The Bear, if you're looking forward to season 4, keep your eye out for any theater scenes, and you might see me in there. And now, let's talk about some cannabis, because this is the Cannabis Man podcast, and that is why we're all here. I would like to start by telling you about some products that I got the privilege of trying this week. You may recall, if you've listened to all my past episodes, I had an interview with Ben Meggs, who runs Bayou City Hemp. Well, Ben is involved in another company now out of Texas called Howdy. And Howdy, which is an expression I use as a greeting, probably more often than I should as a Midwesterner. People sometimes look at me strange when I say it because maybe it doesn't fit the region, but I find it to be a nice, collegiate sort of greeting. I think it's just a fun way of starting a conversation with somebody new. But I like it even more now because Howdy is making THC beverages, and they have a lot of different offerings. I'm going to tell you about the one that I enjoyed the most, which was their lemonade. It's a low dose, they notify you on the front of the can here, low dose THC beverage, 12 fluid ounces, 5 milligrams of THC derived from hemp, made in Texas, and as they say right at the top, ain't no alcohol in this thing. I have talked a lot about the beverage space on this show because I believe that it is primed to explode. It already is exploding, but I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. There are a lot of reasons for that, and I've mentioned them on the show, but just quickly, I think because of how socially beverages are baked into our society and how we interact with each other. You see, whether you're an alcohol drinker or not, I'm sure you notice how many ads there are, how huge the alcohol industry is, and how much, socializing with people, if you're ever taking a break from alcohol and you get all the questions that follow it, and almost people like trying to sell you on some drink for some reason, it really gives you an indication of just how baked into our society drinking really is. So therefore, I think that cannabis beverages really offer such a great alternative to these alcohol drinks if you want to take a break from them at all for whatever reason, but also because they are more approachable than some other cannabis products. If people have never smoked or have never tried it, edibles can be a little bit too scary because I'm sure they've heard stories about people who consumed too much unintentionally and had a bad time. And then if you get into like the joints or certainly the dab rigs and all that with the concentrates, don't even get me started. You show somebody one of those, glass sets that looks like it's out of a science lab. That is the opposite of approachable. I mean, I'm somebody that's used those, and sometimes I get a little bit discouraged when someone's like, oh, this is the 10-step process to ultimately inhale this concentrate. That's just not my thing. Cracking into a beverage like this can from Howdy, that's nothing. Handing somebody a can of something and then them taking a sip of it is so much more approachable than pretty much any other form of cannabis consumption. So that is why I think that this idea from Howdy making these different, beverages and stuff is just perfect. The lemonade, it's so nice because there's a little bit of carbonation to it. It's not perfectly smooth, but it's not too carbonated either, where you really feel that scratch in the back of your throat. It's just carbonated enough to make you feel even more refreshed than just a smooth lemonade. I thought the taste of this was brilliant. 70 calories for the can, no fat, no cholesterol, 10 milligrams of sodium, 15 grams of carbs, and most of that is from added sugars. So I will say there's a little more sugar than I would prefer in these lemonades, but this isn't the only beverage they offer. Howdy has ranch water. They have Palomas. If you've ever had that cocktail, they have a version of it, which, again, alcohol-free, but it's kind of a proper Paloma cocktail is made with tequila. It's made with grapefruit, so it's very citrusy. It's got the carbonation. It's got those bubbles. It's a great summery cocktail if you've had it before. Howdy makes an alcohol-free Paloma with THC in that. The ranch water is pretty much basic seltzer. They also have sweet tea, which is also slightly carbonated. A little sweet. It's got some added sugars in there. But I enjoy all of those beverages. I brought one of their 16-ounce Palomas on the golf course recently. I was with my brother, Dan, my sister, Kelly, and my stepdad, Ray. They took me out golfing for my birthday on Memorial Day, and we played 9 holes, and Dan and I shared this Paloma, and it was just perfect. It was a hot day, not too hot, but it was hot enough where you want a beverage in there, and I cracked it open on like the second or third hole, and we were just kind of, sipping from it for the remainder of the outing, and it was just perfect. I never felt like I got too, overwhelmed by it. It was just a nice mellow buzz, but it also had that refreshment element that a good beverage on a hot day can offer you. Something else besides these canned beverages. And like I said, I think of those all that I just mentioned, the lemonade was probably my favorite. I enjoyed all of them, but the lemonade was really good. But they don't just have the canned beverages. They are offering bottles of THC spirits, so to speak. Spiritless spirits, if you will. And they were kind enough to send me a couple bottles of these. They have different sizes. One of them is kind of like one of those small pocket-sized glass bottles. But then they also have proper 750 milliliter bottles here, like a typical bottle of wine or a full bottle of liquor or anything like that. It's called Howdy Hooch Cannabis Spirit, and this flavor is cinnamon flavor. 5 milligrams of THC per serving size, which they list as 1.5 fluid ounces. So basically, this is kind of like Fireball. If you're familiar with that alcoholic beverage, it's got a very thick, syrupy, cinnamony taste. This is not that thick, and it's not that sweet, but it does have that cinnamon kick, and it's alcohol-free, THC only. But you get a bottle of this Howdy Hooch, and you take a little shot of it after dinner, and it's just like you drank a can of the lemonade, or you smoked a joint, or you popped a low-dose edible or something like that. So the freedom to be able to just take a shot of one of these THC spirits here, this cannabis spirit, this experience was something I hadn't done before. And this is me 3+ years into the show and a cannabis user of 20+ years. I never had this experience of popping a cork on a bottle, pouring the shot into a shot glass, and throwing it back, but there's no alcohol in it. It's just the kind of THC buzz that I crave. Now, people are going to have different experiences with this, just like anything else. You may not be a Fireball person. And again, it's not a perfect comparison. I just use that analogy because I think more people are familiar with Fireball. So you might get the cinnamon kind of flavor that I'm talking about here. But I'm not that big onto Fireball, and I really enjoy this Howdy Hooch. And so, I decided to, for this episode, I decided to bring a shot glass, pour myself 1.5 fluid ounces, roughly. I feel like we have some larger shot glasses around here. There's no particular reason for that. Neither Gretchen nor I are big drinkers these days, but these shot glasses definitely got some use this week after those Howdy Hooch bottles arrived. So I've got a little treat here for myself. I'm recording this just after 3 p.m. on May 30th. So it is the afternoon and it's a Friday. I hope whatever you're doing, you've had a good week, you're enjoying yourself, and maybe you're hopefully right now getting into your first cannabis product of the weekend, looking ahead to a beautiful, almost summer weekend, certainly here around the Midwest. But whatever it is, I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you got some stuff to look forward to this weekend. Spend time with those you love, and cheers to this world in which we live, where products like these and cannabis at large is just spreading around all the time. Really happy to be here. Cheers. So, immediately you get the spice of cinnamon. Gets you in the back of the throat, gets you kind of at the top of your mouth and around the tongue, and it gets that saliva generating that cinnamon kind of does. And it lingers there for a little bit. Again, it's not like you're chomping on one of those big red sticks of gum. It's not like you're eating some cinnamon-heavy candy. It's not even as thick or syrupy as Fireball, like I said, but you do definitely get the cinnamon bite right off the bat, and then it fades slowly. And what I do like about this is that it's not as thick and syrupy, like I said, as Fireball is. It's a little thinner, more watered down, and therefore it's a little more refreshing, I find it to be. But again, 0 fat, no cholesterol, no sodium, and only in the 1.5 fluid ounces shot that I just took, 3 carbs, and those are 3 grams of added sugars. That's what that comes from. So, something to keep in mind, if you're somebody that, wants to avoid added sugars entirely, and I know plenty of those people, then, maybe this isn't for you necessarily. If the idea of having some beverages free of alcohol, but with a little THC in there, that might bring you some refreshment that you want to share with people, check out Howdy, made from Texas. Howdy Hooch, as well as their lemonade, their tea, their ranch water, their palomas. Really great stuff, all of it. And let me know what you think. 872-269-2403 if you want to send a text or leave a voicemail. Let me know what you think about Howdy. And now on to this week's expert interview. My guests today, and yes, I am doubling up, so that was a plural introduction there. My guests are both involved at a high level of the parent company of Tyson 2.0, as in Mike Tyson, Iron Mike, who we all know from boxing and his legendary career. Well, he has been getting into the cannabis space. He's been in it for quite some time, and his brand, Tyson 2.0, just launched outside the U.S. in South Africa. I'm very excited to watch this expansion of the green frontier that I talk about, not just across the U.S. in states that have legalized here, and recreationally we're almost at half the country now, but seeing the expansion across the world. European countries, there are 12 legal cannabis companies in Europe, and it's supposed to be moving up to 20 this year. So this is a global movement, and it's really exciting to see companies launch, especially ones that have a footprint here in the United States as well as abroad, and offering people who could desperately use some cannabis products to improve their quality of life. It is great to see this expansion. And so here to talk about that expansion of Tyson 2.0 are the CEO of Karma Holdco, Adam Wilks, as well as the COO, Ryan Burke, both of Karma Hold, which owns Tyson 2.0. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining the show today.
Thanks for having us today, Don.
Great to be here.
Let's just talk a little about your journeys into cannabis, and then we can kind of move into the Tyson brand. But Adam, why don't you go first and just tell us how your journey into cannabis started?
Yeah, so I started consuming cannabis at an early age, around 14, 15 years old, as a recreational product. Until about the age of 17, I didn't really understand the medical side of it until my grandma was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and actually asked me to bring her some weed down to her place. So I actually brought her a joint. We sat on her living room floor smoked a joint and watched the peace come over her as she consumed cannabis. It was a beautiful thing. And at that moment, it changed my perspective on the plant, being, realizing it was a real medicine. Fast forward, 10, 15 years in the private equity space, started investing with a group called SPE, Superior Private Equity, into different cannabis operations from cultivation, manufacturing, distributors, and dabbled across a dozen plus brands. We did that for about 5 years before I met Mike Tyson and co-founded the launch of Tyson 2.0. But it's been an incredible journey, and cannabis has always played a role in my life since, again, my early teens.
Wow, that's huge. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I officially got into the space in 2013, originally in Washington when Washington flipped rec. So I was a part of numerous companies that were starting to expand into the brand space. At the time, I was still based in California. Started to become very familiar with a lot of the Prop 215 brands that are still around today in the California market and beyond. Began consulting for them, and from there, I was a part of the co-founding team of a large cultivation operation that's still humming in today's California environment, and really bootstrapped that thing from the ground up without raising any sort of institutional capital. At our height, we were controlling upwards of 400,000 square feet of indoor canopy, so I really got to get an understanding of the operational side of things, living and dying by every single gram being sold out the door, et cetera. And so I ran that for a while, and Adam and I met a few years back. And as an operator, the last thing that I really had the privilege or focus on was building a brand, right? I was mostly concerned with making sure that our yields were protected, and our rooms didn't suffer from any sort of like root aphids, all the things and the headaches that come with owning and operating a facility. So being able to come in on the brand side and offering groups like the company that I was a part of, a solution from being able to actually build a captive audience with a sophisticated global brand was super exciting to me, and still is. And taking that experience and being hands-on on the operational side, it gives us the ability to really suss out partners around the world and choose the best partners that have the capability of making the brand long lasting and something that is cemented in this industry for years and years to come. So yeah, that's kind of the synopsis on me.
Very cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing, both you guys. And obviously you guys have both been in the space for quite some time. And that speaks to your familiarity with it, being in it from before the daylight of legality, like that I like to call it, back in the dark days of black market only. I share those memories all the time on the show, talking about how I sound like such an old man, but it's like these kids today who complain about the dispensaries and the regulation, hoops they got to jump through. I'm just like, you don't get to talk to me until you waited for 3 hours at some basketball court in the dark of night for some guy you met at a party to bring you a bag of something that you hoped was, a good product that would make you feel the way you wanted to feel. And so to be able to have brands like Tyson 2.0, as well as these other cannabis brands that are growing, and the reliability of those products, I just think it's such a great place to be, and it's an exciting world that we live in here. And Adam, speaking, with your grandma, that's a touching story, and I think a lot of people have had a personal one like that. I always like to say, at least she had you in that time, because I know plenty of people who didn't get into cannabis until after something like that, and their grandparent or their parent who needed that quality of life or alleviation of symptoms didn't really get it or wasn't comfortable enough with the status of cannabis to even take that shot. So at least she was able to get that relief, which is a really big deal. And that kind of relief is what you guys are bringing now, not just to the United States, but to South Africa, which has got to be such an exciting launch. If you can, tell me about what the launch was like. I understand you guys were just there over the weekend.
Yeah, so for us, it's a goal of ours to be everywhere in the world, right? Mike Tyson, our again, our largest brand of in Karma Holdco, which you understand we have Ric Flair, Future, and so on. He's got a goal to be everywhere in the world. He wants everyone in the world to have his plant-based medicine. So every time we're with him, we'll travel the world. He says, why aren't we in this country? Why aren't we here? So we've set out to ensure that we can bring Tyson 2.0 plant-based medicine to the masses everywhere that it comes online. And as you mentioned earlier, we're seeing dozens of new countries releasing their new rules and regs for anticipated new launches for 25. You're hearing about Switzerland and Poland and Czech Republic and all these new countries coming online. South Africa was one that Mike was adamant to be in, and as soon as the opportunity was there for us and we went through our due diligence process, found the right partner, we knew it was the next one on our map. Tyson 2.0 is now available across 19 countries, the brand itself, not necessarily cannabis, but accessories and other branded products. And again, we couldn't be more excited about South Africa. It's an incredible market for us. The consumers have been extremely receptive to the brand. The grand opening was a home run for us. And yeah, it's been a goal of ours, again, as I mentioned, and Mike's, to be everywhere, and it's just one of many new markets for Tyson 2.0 to be present in.
It's fantastic. You mentioning, I can understand the drive to be present globally, and I think that mission specifically of making sure that the plant-based medicine that Mike was talking about, giving that to all people of the world, those of us that have been transformed in any way by cannabis can understand the drive to do that. But I think, it speaks to the type of person that he is to want to bring this relief and quality of life improvements to people everywhere. But I also want to ask, aside from just the overarching brand, what products are available for people under the Tyson 2.0 brand? Maybe Ryan, you could speak to this, I would imagine.
Sure. Yeah, specific to South Africa, correct?
Yeah, but also in the States as well. I mean, I know you just launched in South Africa, but what should people be looking for on dispensary shelves that's under the Tyson brand?
Sure. And this varies, territory by territory, depending on what's legally allowed to be sold.
Sure,
right? So,
sure.
Especially as you start to look at some of these newer international markets, the restrictions on product, vary again from country to country. So our system is first by finding the best operators in those territories, right? Those that know what they're doing from a product standpoint, have the ability to scale into market, et cetera. From there, we kind of back in our system of figuring out exactly what the SKU plan is, right? Certain genetics work in, one country, but may not in another. So we spend a lot of time diligencing those markets and making sure that what we come to the table with is actually authentic to that region. In a territory like South Africa, what's currently available. South Africa is interesting because from a regulatory standpoint, it at this point is a little bit of a free for all. If you compare it to, a territory like the UK, it's just completely different, right? You can go into a store and essentially buy anything without really any limit of what you can and can't purchase.
Wow.
So we're able to be a little bit more flexible in our offerings down there, specific to cannabis derived products, right? Edibles, vapes, flour, beverages, etc. In territories, like I mentioned, the UK, Germany, Australia doesn't allow smokables at the moment, right? So we'll place a very large emphasis on our edible program down there, as that's currently the SKU that will occupy most consumption. So we are able to scale in that way by having very close relationships with our operating partners and supporting them along the way with sophisticated marketing plans to ensure that, again, the brand has staying power. It's very easy, especially when you have a name like Mike Tyson, to ignite, let's call it, initial excitement. But there's no such thing as a brand that has the power of just sticking around by sheer availability, right?
Right.
We work very hard in making sure that, again, like we're focused on longevity here, as opposed to just being a flash in the pan.
Yeah, totally get that. And an important point. I mean, you bring up that brand staying power. Even Coca-Cola and McDonald's still run ads every single year. It speaks to that, even a brand as ubiquitous as those, they still understand that it's like, well, just being there on the shelf doesn't mean people are thinking of you top of mind and all that. So marketing, promoting, that stuff is hugely important to keep people excited about what you're offering to them and also thinking of you when that need arises for them. When they think about which product they're going to go use, having you be top of mind is a big part of that. You also brought up the issue of regulation between countries. Here in the U.S., I always make the example that every state's like its own island because the regulation laws are different state by state. I'm here in Illinois, and I can go and buy what I want to buy, and Michigan's legal, so I can kind of transport between those two states. But in order to do that, if I'm driving, I've got to drive between Indiana or Wisconsin, both of which are illegal territories. And so that gets dicey, transporting across those illegal territories. So it's just this very weird hodgepodge legalization, and that's obviously doubly true in Europe. And so the idea of needing to focus on some brands versus others and the comparison between the UK and South Africa, I get there. Also, like a country like Germany, which is mostly like a medical market with some little spots of rec legalization in there too. Being able to kind of juggle all of these plates of like what's available here and what's available there, it's got to be such a big effort. But at the same time, that's part of what global brands in the cannabis space need to kind of do right now. And so I guess without, sort of necessarily quibbling between like the different markets that are available and whatnot, what would you say are the most popular brands under the Tyson 2.0 umbrella? What is it that, if you are allowed to smoke, like here in the States or in one of the European countries, or like South Africa where everything's available, is it the pre-rolls that are really exciting? Or, you say the gummies in Australia, that's the edible side of it. But what would you say are products that people are uniformly pretty excited about under the Tyson brand?
Yeah, I think it would be foolish not to mention, our most viral product to date has been the Mike Bite, right? Kind of playing on the
Yes.
historic bite fight between Mike and Evander.
Tell me it's an ear-shaped gummy. Is it a little ear?
Yeah, it's a little ear with a bite out of it.
That's amazing.
It continues to be very popular in every market that we touch. We're currently expanding into different SKUs outside of cannabis in, the performance and athletic supplement world for that product as well, just because of the excitement that we generated on the cannabis side. So, that continues to be a juggernaut product. For us, an emphasis on choosing the right flower partner is paramount to our business model, just given, even after all of these years and markets flipping to, recreational markets, et cetera, it still seems to be, the leading category for consumer goods in the cannabis space, right? So we want to make sure that we're aligned with partners that know how to grow very good weed, and we're able to get them genetics, compliantly that, again, kind of fit the mold of the market and what they're looking for. We're placing a heavy emphasis on sustainable AIOs this year, all-in-one disposables. We just launched a product called the Pocket Pigeon, which is actually a 0.15 device. So it's good for about 30 hits. And we're specifically using live rosin in those products. Our findings were, live rosin being a very exciting category. Most of the products, if not all the products on the market, especially in the AIO category, they're 0.5s on the low end and, go all the way up from there. What ends up happening is you completely fry off the terps. And if you're a live rosin consumer, you're a little bit more discerning. So as a little bit of a market pivot and reaction, we said, okay, let's shrink this form factor down, make it affordable at retail level, and really give a good client experience from, the first to the last hit. So that's been very successful upon launch. So yeah, I would say, we're luckily in a position where we can be somewhat product agnostic, right? We have a little bit of a cheat code in the way of being able to capture a consumer's attention immediately by having, the Tyson name,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And where we hook them in is making sure, again, that our products are, very, very well produced and consistent across the map. I'd say that is the biggest challenge for any sort of, multi-territory brand, right? Is finding partners that are able to hit that consistency with product across the map, knowing that each market is going to have its own challenges, right? Each market is going to have its own specificity around testing that might yield a different tasting product, right? With flour, et cetera. So, again, we place a heavy emphasis on that. But from a product specific standpoint, we're really able to lean into the ability of being, kind of ubiquitous on the shelf and just making sure that we're driving home a very, very good product, whether it's edibles, pre-rolls, et cetera.
Exciting. It definitely sounds like you guys have the right sort of frame of mind and philosophy coming at your product production, point there. And I totally take that point that you want, the marketing side of it, you mentioned you do have a bit of a cheat code there with a name like Tyson, but also finding that fun of developing that specific edible and playing on something that most people have as a pop culture reference in their lexicon. I think that's brilliant, and it's going to continue to serve you well in South Africa as well as other countries that you expand to. You mentioned you're available in over a dozen countries, which is great. And I've got listeners all over the world here, so they'll want to hear, the countries you're available in. But in terms of states, do you have products on all legal state store shelves?
Yes. Yeah, we're in 20 plus states right now.
That's great. I just want to ask, for people who are going into dispensaries and might be looking for Tyson products, is that the name of those? Is Tyson 2.0, is that listed on all your brands, or are there different names underneath that umbrella?
Yeah, no, Tyson 2.0 is the Mike Tyson brand. We also offer Ric Flair Drip, which is a world famous 16-time world champion wrestler Ric Flair's line. And then we have Evil by Future, which is 5-time Grammy Award-winning hip-hop star Future. And all of our products are authentic to our talent, products that our talent use, a lot of them in their day-to-day life. And like to give the consumer that opportunity to connect with the talent on another level.
That's great. And so is there a website or a store locator where people, if they're interested in finding where these products are nearest to them, they can go find that out?
Absolutely. Yeah. You can go to Tyson2.0.com.
There you go. Head there, listener. You can find out where nearest you these products are in dispensaries. I want to ask you guys both as well. As we keep mentioning, you just expanded in South Africa. Very exciting. I want to ask, as these, we were talking about the expansion in Europe, what are your eyes on for the future, I would say, beyond South Africa now? When you look toward future expansion, you mentioned that Mike wants to be everywhere in the world. What's on your immediate mind for the next 3 years, let's say? Which markets around the world do you see coming online that Tyson 2.0 will want to get into?
We got our eyes everywhere. It's every time Mike goes to a new country, he's calling me and asking why we're not there yet. And we got to walk him through the legalities of each territory. But there's dozens. Ryan and myself, we're together almost every morning going through, our strategies and game plans moving forward for 25 and onward. And just the list of new countries releasing their new rules and regs are really endless. From Poland to Switzerland to Czech Republic, they're all lined up. Brazil there's so many new territories that we're excited about, anxious about, and really looking forward to bringing Tyson 2.0. We were fortunate to launch Thailand recently as well. I'm trying to think what other we're all over at this point. UK and Germany have been a huge success for us.
And I want to say another 4 countries will be live before the second half of 2025 for us. So,
wow.
Continue to expand and, just make sure again that we're putting a focus on product first.
Totally. I think that, again, the philosophy is great. I think you guys are approaching it from the right way, and I know that people everywhere will be excited to just look forward to if Tyson 2.0 is not already available where they are. Obviously, it's coming soon, and that'll be something that everyone can look forward to. I do want to ask, just before the end here, regulation. We've talked about how iffy that is across the states and across other countries, but We were hoping that rescheduling was going to happen in the U.S. In January. That's been pushed back now at least 3 months, maybe longer. And there are countries like Thailand which have kind of done this flip-flop thing where it was heavily prohibited, then they swung all the other way. Then their newest PM was saying they might go back that way and now decided not to. How do you deal as a global brand with that kind of ambiguity in terms of status of a drug in different countries around the world? How do you make sure that you're on the right spot?
Yeah, I mean, look, between Adam and I, decades of experience in the space, there is no right answer to this, right? You take it as it comes, and hopefully you have a business model that is able to survive very quick, drastic changes, right? Past that, there's really nothing we can do beyond hopefully using some of the influence that Mike has to ignite policy change in the States, for example, right? Which we're very active in. It's very important to Mike that he's able to use his influence and hopefully leading to positive reform. As far as operators, though, right? Like we're in a game of constant reaction, right? And beyond that, again, there's not a whole lot we can do. Where other countries do have us beat, right now as it relates to cannabis is just the fact that you can grow a product in one country and export it to, a number of other countries, right?
Yeah.
If we had the ability, at least in the States, to have any sort of interstate commerce, I really do think that would play a huge, huge role in the survival of what I would consider very well-run businesses that simply at this point don't have the capability of surviving because every chip is stacked against them. That being said, at this point, I've become jaded to policy change in the States simply because, everyone's always had the idea of, oh, by now we would have been federally legal. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah.
And, I hope to be pleasantly surprised by this administration.
Right.
But we're not holding our breath, right? And at the end of the day, we're here now and we have to play the same rules that everyone else is subject to. So it's run a good business and, take the licks as they come.
That makes sense, and it's a pragmatic approach. I think that's the best way to kind of maintain your attitude there. Don't hold your breath, plan for the worst, hope for the best, and I think that's just a good way for any business to operate, especially one that's navigating the murky waters of legal cannabis in the U.S. and around the world, like Tyson 2.0 is. Listener, wherever you are in the States or around the world, you can head to Tyson2.0.com to find out where some of those excellent products are, and if you're not in one of those legal countries, look forward to their expansion because they are doing so rapidly. Ryan Burke, COO, and Adam Wilks, CEO of Karma Hold, the parent of Tyson 2.0. Thanks a lot for jumping on today and sharing your perspective about cannabis.
Thanks for having us, Don.
Appreciate it, Don. Thank you again.
And there you have it, listener. I want to thank my guests, Adam Wilks and Ryan Burke of Tyson 2.0. Really great to see them expanding and just to hear their perspective and their philosophy on products. I think they know what they have in terms of the celebrity sort of figures attached with those brands. They know the value of them in terms of marketing, but they're not just resting on those laurels knowing that they can sell whatever that those guys put out there. They make the effort to stay true to what these people actually use in their day-to-day lives and then bring that to the public. And if you didn't hear my takes on the Tyson 2.0 products, you can go back and listen to the full reviews. But I will tell you, the Mike's Bites, those gummies, fabulous. They last a while. The design of them, the ear with the bite taken out, just great. The texture, fun to bite into, good flavors. They have a whole ton of flavor offerings. I really liked the green, like sour apple, and I also like the watermelon. And I think they also make fabulous flower products. They have pre-rolled joints that are infused. I loved those, and their brawler blunts. That's the review you should really go back and listen to because I was floored by their brawler blunts. They're infused as well. They've got one of those little hash holes kind of in the middle of it, and they're also coated in keef, kind of a dusted looking blunt, but they've got glass tips, very classy. And mine lasted, these are like 2.5 gram blunts. So I shared some with people and we were able to make them last plenty of time. And when I kept one to myself, I was able to make it last like 3 or 4 days. I would go downstairs, I'd hit it 2 or 3 times, then put it back in its glass container, and then I would hit it tomorrow, and I was able to make it last like that. But I love the Brawler blunts. They mentioned the pocket pigeons. I did try some of those, and even though they said that they made it with the live rosin and everything else, I love the concept of it. The disposable small vape that's good for about 30 hits or so. I love that concept, but my experience with it, I didn't love the flavor. Whether it was because it's so close to the heating source, it kind of tasted a little bit like a battery to me, and I tried 3 different of their options in terms of the pocket pigeons, but I'm not just that big into vapes and disposable vapes anyway, so my sort of tastes gravitated more toward their pre-rolled joints and those Brawler blunts along with the Mike's Bites gummies. That is where I think their money really is. But maybe you have a different experience with the pocket pigeons. Let me know what you think about the Tyson 2.0 products. You can head to that website to find out where they are nearest you, tyson2.0.com. Now let's move on to some news, and I've got a lot to get through this week. There has been a lot of news relating to cannabis the last few weeks, and I'll try and rifle through some of these. You can always find these articles that I reference on the show and that I go through with you. I link them all below in the description notes. So at any point, if you want to follow along, or if you want to read them fully for yourselves later, I usually leave some of the article unread on the show to encourage you to go click them yourself and support these publications because they do great work. But let's start with the bad news first, I suppose. This is an article from Marijuana Moment. It was published yesterday, May 29th, from when I'm recording this, by Kyle Yeager. Headline, DEA promotes claim that marijuana could be more likely to cause psychosis than meth. DEA is giving weight to the idea that marijuana could be more likely to cause psychosis than methamphetamine, and it's promoting a recent article where a psychiatrist indicated that the jury is out on the question. This came in an email blast on Wednesday. DEA's Just Think Twice campaign shared a link to the story from the Lund Report with the subject line that asks, quote, meth or cannabis, which raises risk of psychosis more, end quote. Going on into the body of that email, Kyle shares, quote, studies have linked early and heavy use of cannabis to schizophrenia and psychosis, DEA said, while prominently featuring a quote from Oregon-based psychiatrist David Retu, who said there's, quote, overwhelming evidence that cannabis use, particularly for young people, changes the brain, and this is particularly true for adolescents. But when it comes to psychosis, there's really strong evidence at this point that cannabis raises the risk of psychotic disorders more than other drugs, even methamphetamines, which is surprising, Retu said. While that was the only reference to meth in the original article, DEA evidently felt that standalone quote warranted more attention with the subject line that indicated it was a key component of the reporting in the agency's view. Kyle goes on, this comes amid lingering questions about how DEA will navigate a pending marijuana rescheduling proposal that was initiated under the Biden administration. And while the agency's long been known to promote sensational claims about the risks of cannabis use, it appears there's been a stepped-up push to reinforce that message, particularly for youth. Kyle gives an example. DEA recently teamed up with an anti-marijuana organization to mark National Prevention Week, promoting a campaign that encourages people to share memes with dubious claims about the effects of cannabis, including the theory that it is a, quote, gateway drug to using other substances. Kyle gives a few more examples and then later on says DEA has developed a reputation for its awkward messaging and educational materials around youth drug use. Yeah, any of us who were in classrooms where the DARE officer came in to tell us that our brains would turn into scrambled eggs after being anywhere near cannabis smoke is very familiar with the awkward messaging from the DEA. And Kyle gives another example of this. In 2023, DEA advised young people that rather than doing drugs, they should focus on becoming Instagram influencers. Great life advice. Thanks, DEA. The agency promoted tips on how to get a natural high as an alternative to drugs, sharing what it said were, quote, 7 better highs, such as becoming famous on Instagram, playing video games, and going to a pet store to look at animals. By the way, you can do all that stuff high. I mean, if you want to become famous on Instagram, you want to play video games, go to a pet store and look at animals, all things, just like everything else, I would say, in my opinion, all things that are better when high. Just like that line, I believe it was Pineapple Express, where Seth Rogen says, just weed makes everything better. Just makes music better, makes food better, it makes sex even better. Just something about that. I've never found that to be untrue, at least in my life, but that is my opinion. Maybe you feel differently. As I've said many times on the show before, and I'll say it many times again, so forgive me beating this dead horse, but I find it necessary sometimes to clarify my position. I don't believe cannabis is right for everybody, and I don't believe it is a miraculous panacea that'll cure all the pains of life's ills and the stresses and anxieties and negative quality of life issues we might face. I don't think cannabis is just this perfect solution for that, but I do know that it can really help with many negative quality of life issues, such as getting to sleep at night, such as dealing with stress or anxiety, such as helping you focus if you have ADHD. These are kinds of things that many people have reported in the past, benefits they experience when using cannabis. That doesn't mean that people won't have a bad time when using it, and it doesn't mean, crucially, and I think this is important to say as well, it doesn't mean that what the DEA is saying here about potential psychosis from cannabis use, especially among adolescents, that doesn't inherently mean that this is untrue. Now, more likely to cause psychosis than meth? I don't know about that. I would say the jury's probably still out on that. But there have been many studies in the last few years, since cannabis has been legalized and moved into different spaces, the high THC potency combined with earlier use by younger aged people, it does seem like there is some very real risk of psychosis symptoms. What the connection is it guaranteed? What's the age cutoff? All those are questions that more research is needed to suss out. But even though I rolled my eyes when I saw this headline, and even though I'm always happy to poke fun at the awkwardness of the DEA's messaging, and I will always point out that they have a vested interest in keeping cannabis Schedule 1, they are the law enforcement boogeyman that is behind this prohibition in the first place. However, that does not inherently mean that what they're saying here about the risks of psychosis is untrue. And that's something that we all need to be aware of. I'm not sitting here saying into this microphone that smoking cannabis makes you a psycho. I would never say that because I don't believe that to be true. And, you know, maybe I'm a psycho and I just don't realize it. I admit that. Maybe that means I'm not psychotic. Maybe it means that I am. Who knows? You know, I am sitting alone here talking into this microphone about cannabis, and I've done it for 3 years. Maybe some people think that makes me a psycho. I really don't know. I don't know that I have strong enough evidence against that case to make a strong argument there. But I'm just trying to be fair as I present this information. There is enough noise coming out of scientific communities who are studying these things. This issue of psychosis and these symptoms has come up enough from across different sources that we cannot just dismiss it out of hand. Just because the DEA is the one saying it doesn't mean that it's inherently false. And so I guess my final point on the issue is that there's a reason why the age of 21 is established for those who are supposed to be using cannabis, especially high-potency THC. We know now that our brains are not fully developed until 25. So the idea that any substance, alcohol, caffeine, sugars, cannabis, any substance that's used by a still developing brain, especially if that substance is highly potent, the way that some of the modern strains of cannabis are with THC, I don't think it's radical to say that that can affect a still developing brain in a negative way. And that's just something that we need. If we're going to be responsible and we're going to move this normalization fight forward, we need to be open about the potential risks. And we need to be responsible about who we're letting consume these products and when. in their lives. But I digress, and that is all I'm going to read from this article. Again, it's linked below. Marijuana Moment does great work in terms of their research. Their coverage of this topic is second to none, I think. So do me a favor and give this article a click. Read through the rest of it. But let's flip over to some happier news now. Something I think we can all get excited about. There was a Vice article this week, published May 28th by Veronica Booth, and I've linked this below as well. Headline, "We might be one step closer to legalizing marijuana federally." Subheader, "The hallelujah is on the tip of my blunt." The article, I will read some of it. "We're inching, more like centimetering, closer to recreational and medicinal marijuana being federally legal. Now, let's not get too excited. It hasn't happened yet. But there is some new news for us to celebrate, which obviously means facing a J or taking an extra edible. And by all means, do that. I encourage that." "What am I talking about?" she asks. CBS News reported that the U.S. Justice Department has proposed a reclassification of marijuana to a Schedule III drug. That would substantially loosen the restrictions on cannabis across the country. I have talked about this rescheduling process for the last year plus, ever since the Biden administration first proposed it and, set the Health and Human Services Secretary on reviewing it, all the way up until the administrative hearing, which was supposed to happen in December and then got pushed to January and then got pushed to basically indefinitely. However, that administrative review was initially started by the Biden White House and then HHS. The news here is that the Justice Department has proposed reclassifying to Schedule III. Now, then you get into the specifics about Schedule III. This doesn't mean it would make cannabis outright legal, but it would ease restrictions and redefine it as a drug, lower potential for abuse, Schedule III category means, and a higher potential for medical benefits. This would put it on the same level as ketamine and certain types of Tylenol, the types with codeine. The decision was reported in mid-May. The department has 60 days to make a final determination before the rule is officially published. So, expect to have answers around mid-July. Maybe we'll have a new reason to celebrate America in July. Hey, I look forward to that. Either way, Veronica Booth, nicely done. This is something to celebrate.
I'm getting high on reefer.
Yes, indeed, Niles. That'll be the time. But for now, let's continue with some news. But I'm really, really excited about this. This is different than the rescheduling process we've been hearing about for the last 2 years. The Justice Department being involved is just a different twist on this whole thing. This could go a very different way now. Still not holding my breath, just like I talked about with Adam and Ryan in our interview this week. Still best to be cautious, but cautiously optimistic. That's what I'll say I am about this now. Moving on, I'm just going to do a quick highlight of this article. It's from the marijuanaherald.com, which also does great work. This was published yesterday, May 29th, and the headline, U.S. states have collected nearly $25 billion in cannabis tax revenue since recreational sales began in 2014. Anthony Martinelli published this. He has done some other articles that I've referenced on the show before. Since Colorado and Washington launched the first legal markets in 2014, states have collectively generated over $24.7 billion in tax revenue from recreational sales alone. The total surpassed $4.5 billion last year, a record high for a single year. 2024 alone saw that much tax revenue from recreational sales. So that's all I'm really going to get into for this. It's linked below. You can find out more context about it. But the thing that matters here is in 10 years, forget medical. Recreational cannabis in 10 years has led to nearly $25 billion in U.S. tax revenue. That's new revenue that everybody's always seeking. We made $25 billion of it in 10 years, thanks to legal recreational cannabis. So that's linked below. You can find out more about that. Staying in the U.S. and kind of on a related note, thanks to the cannabis tax revenue, there is a certain city that is giving cash to its residents thanks to weed. This is from greenstate.com. Kara Wheatstock published this May 28th. Cannabis reform is often passed with promises of new tax revenue to put into the city. Every state has raked in boatloads of tax revenue, poured into various causes like addiction services and schools. One place in New Mexico has granted the most straightforward way yet. Albuquerque is cutting checks to its residents, focusing first on those who live in vulnerable communities. New mothers, people of color, and trans people are among those focused on for the first wave of no-strings-attached checks from the Cannabis Tax Fund. In a press release, Mayor Tim Keller said, quote, "This program puts money where it's needed most into the hands of struggling families working to build a better future. Albuquerque is a city that will always fight to correct injustices and will help push families to get the tools they need to succeed with dignity." The first group to receive checks included 80 households. Each will receive $750 per month for 3 years. A second wave will join the initiative eventually, including 20 additional families and 40 opportunity youth. Mayor Keller established the initiative as part of a promise to address racial disparities in the area. The program has tasked the City of Albuquerque's Office of Equity and Inclusion with adequately doling out the $4 million allocated to the Cannabis Equity and Community Reinvestment Fund. This is the first of many steps to spend the money as intended. Plenty more of that article. I've linked it below as well, but that was something I felt was worth bringing to your attention. Albuquerque, New Mexico is actually taking some of this tax money, and as I just said, $25 billion collectively over the last 10 years. New Mexico is actually taking what they've made from these rec sales, their taxes, and they are giving it right back to residents who need it. That is fantastic. Bravo, New Mexico. Bravo, Albuquerque. I hope to see more and more states do likewise here. Stepping outside the U.S. and looking eastward toward a country across the Atlantic, the Czech Republic has taken an historic step toward cannabis policy modernization. This was written by Johnny Green, published today, May 30th, actually. Lawmakers in the Czech Republic have reportedly approved an historic measure today that will legalize home cultivation for adult use. Part of the measure also legalizes the possession of a personal amount of dried cannabis and reduces penalties for possessing larger amounts. The historic measure's approval was announced by longtime Czech cannabis activist Lucas Hurt on LinkedIn. And that LinkedIn post is in this article. And there's a little bit more information there, but that's the main point, that headline there, that home cultivation is going to be legalized in the Czech Republic, along with penalties being reduced for possessing larger amounts of dried cannabis and legalizing possessing smaller amounts. That's just another example, and the guys from Tyson 2.0, Adam and Ryan, were talking about the Czech Republic moving in this direction. They mentioned Poland as well, a handful of other countries. Some of my recent guests have been focused globally on the upcoming cannabis markets who are going to enter this green frontier. It's really cool to see a country like the Czech Republic and some of these other conservative ones like Germany and Ukraine and Poland. The fact that they are embracing cannabis beyond just the medical value of it for med patients, that I think is very encouraging and exciting. And the final article that I wanted to share with you today comes from cannabis.net, a blog that I have cited many times. And this is posted by Dana Smith this morning at midnight of May 30th. Want to reduce your anxiety and panic attacks? Look for these terpenes in your cannabis. And then Dana Smith lays out some of the ones you should be looking for to reduce anxiety. I've talked a lot about terpenes on the show. They refer to a group of naturally occurring compounds widely found in the cannabis world. These are different from cannabinoids. Cannabinoids like THC and CBD and CBN and CBG and THCV and all of those are specific cannabinoids in the plant. Terpenes are different. They are produced in the trichomes. That is where the cannabinoids are synthesized. Biologically speaking, Dana says, terpenes help protect it from pests and other environmental stressors. They also contribute to the plant's immune response. And for us consumers, terpenes provide a wealth of medicinal and therapeutic benefits aside from just the aroma and the flavor when you consume the cannabis. As part of the entourage effect, terpenes act together with other cannabinoids to produce enhanced effects. And more importantly, she says, the medical benefits of terpenes help patients better. Various terpenes have different therapeutic benefits. For instance, terps like linalool and myrcene are known for their antifungal and antibacterial properties. Meanwhile, beta-caryophyllene is known for its excellent anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and antibacterial properties, among others. And then she moves on to talk about the anxiety-beating terpenes here. And then she lists some terpenes that can help with it. The first one on the list, linalool, one of the most soothing and calming terpenes, and one of my personal favorites. That's me, Don, saying that, not Dana in the article, but it is one of my favorites. She goes on, even just one sniff has been known to induce relaxation and decrease the symptoms of anxiety as well as stress. Terpenes also widely found in lavender, so it's not surprising given how relaxing lavender is. Linalool has a mild yet floral scent that has hints of lavender, and in some strains it may have a sweeter, tropical, or spicy aroma. Some strains that are high in it include Lavender Kush, Bubba Kush, and Amnesia Haze. What a fun name that last one is. Next one is beta-caryophyllene, also just referred to as caryophyllene. Another terp well known for its ability to soothe depressive symptoms and anxiety. She notes one aspect that makes it unique is that it isn't strictly just a terpene. It's also classified as a cannabinoid too, and one that's rich in therapeutic benefits. She notes the strains that are high in beta-caryophyllene include Lemon G, Super Silver Haze, Blue Cheese, and Apple. Third strain is, or terpene that is myrcene, wonderfully tranquilizing terp widely found in indica strains that are high in THC. She notes that it's deliciously relaxing, both mentally and physically. Myrcene's an effective sedative, excellent for when those anxious moments make it difficult to focus. Studies show myrcene promotes excellent sleep quality while relaxing muscles, both of which are great for helping reduce anxiety. She notes Blue Dream, OG Kush, Purple Urkel, and Harlequin are strains that are high in myrcene. And she notes a couple of other terpenes as well that can help with anxiety. I am going to abstain from sharing them with you just to encourage you to click on this article yourself and find out for yourself the remaining two terpenes that can help with anxiety. But linalool, caryophyllene, and myrcene are great places to start, and those strains that we mentioned there, her, Dana, in her article, and me now on this Cannabis Man podcast, those are some you can target if you're looking specifically for benefits fighting anxiety. All of those news articles I just shared are linked below in the description notes. By all means, check them out for yourself. I hope that gave you some good information and just some good perspective on where things stand today with legal cannabis. And as I like to do to wrap up these episodes, especially after those news stories, some of which, like that first one, can be a little bit depressing. But what it's time for now, after that, is to just relax a little bit. Take a deep breath in. Pause a little bit at the top. Think about something soothing and nice exhale. The box breathing, if you're not familiar with it, you count the length of your breaths and you try and keep them uniform. Like 4 seconds in, then you hold for 4 seconds, then breathe out for 4, and then wait 4 more before breathing in. That's a box breathing technique that can also help with anxiety and just kind of keep your head right in the right place. But do a little bit of that if you like, or just pop an edible, light up a joint, heat up your dab rig, pour yourself a little shot of a Howdy Hooch spirit here, get yourself ready to consume some cannabis, and let's you and I dive into this week's High Haiku, read, as always, by my friend Reg Kiefer. Take it away, Reg.
That's called hot box breathing. Right there. That's my technique, Don. Hot box breathing. Okay. Buds ease anxious minds. Borders blur laws start to shift. We pack dreams in haze. Whoa. That was this week's High Haiku.
Thank you, Reg, and I enjoyed your hotbox breathing technique. I liked the little pun, little play on words.
I'm glad you did, man. That was what I was going for. I'll see you.
See you later, Reg, and yeah, just be careful. You're wobbling a little bit as you're walking away here. So let's not cross any streets without help. And thank you, listener, for putting up with that and listening to this episode. I hope you made it to the end and found some of this informative. I want to thank my guests this week, Adam Wilks and Ryan Burke of Tyson 2.0. Very exciting to see their continued expansion around the world. Definitely give those products a try. I highly recommend the Brawler Blunts and their pre-rolled infused joints, as well as the Mike's Bites gummies. So fun, so tasty, and so effective. Really, really love that stuff. They've got some sleepy Mike's Bites too if you're interested in something that calms you down or gets you to sleep at the end of the night. Want to thank the guys at Howdy Hooch and just Howdy Beverages in general for sending me so many delicious beverages to try. Definitely give those a shot if you are as excited as I am about cannabis beverages and looking for a good alternative as we approach the summer months here for alcohol. But if you do try any of the Howdy beverages, let me know what you thought. 872-269-2403. You can send a text and your message will get to me here on the Cannabis Man podcast. Be sure to leave a rating or review for the show, subscribe, comment, all that stuff is welcome. Much appreciate you listening to the show every week, and I hope you have a great weekend. Spend some time with those you love. Give a call, give a text, let people know how you feel. Life is short, goes by fast, and you'll never regret spending that important time making memories with those people that mean the most to you. We'll talk next week on the Cannabis Man podcast. Bye-bye. Cannabis Man is 100% originally crafted by myself, Don Kleppin. Original theme music written and composed by Yusu Kim, aka Good Son.